I'm Sarah.
My name's Amid.
My name's Hassan. I'm an organizer with No One is Illegal Toronto, and we're right here in Toronto just after this amazing Havoc event. I wanted to get some feedback about the Sanctuary City project, in particular about how we've been doing it here in the city. We're trying to, be inspired by San Francisco, but obviously try and change it because we know about the failings that happen there. And in particular, what we've decided is that we want to go after sectors. We want to go after where people gather: food banks, schools, health centers, education. Schools, universities, housing projects where people live, and we want to organize people there, not just to push immigration enforcement out of them, but also to build this sense of community, this sort of idea of rights to the city. And then the hope is that once we've taken back our shelters, once we've taken back our food banks, once we've taken back our schools, and then eventually we can connect them and actually build a city where immigration enforcement cannot work, but also people live with a sense of dignity and justice. That means people are not being pushed out because of issues of accessibility, issues of racialization, gender, sexuality, whatever. So we started back in 2006, and what we started with was we went into Toronto schools, and we were able to, and this was sparked by mass mobilization around 2 students who were arrested in the schools, Kimberly and Gerald Lozano Sosa, and we went into schools and we were able to organize with the schools so that Toronto schools are the only school board in the country where undocumented children can go to school. And we followed that up by going to anti-violence against women sector. And in November of last year, we were actually able to organize directly with undocumented women in shelters and in trauma centers, as well as staff, and directly force immigration enforcement to pass a policy that they would not either wait outside, go inside and identify women, or enter on spaces where undocumented women have access. But the way we did it was by directly building small committees of undocumented women and service providers in each of these spaces. Unfortunately, that sort of backfired upon us, and looking for how to sort of move forward from there. And what happened was that we have now received the policies have changed, where immigration enforcement will not enter except with the permission of the executive directors or the heads of these spaces. So what we're beginning to do is, is build within those areas further to say, okay, we've managed to somewhat liberate our schools, we've managed to somewhat create some autonomy in shelters, sectors, and we're wanting to do the same in health centers. We're trying to do the same in food banks. We're trying to do the same in housing. And the notion is to go space by space so that there is no way for the government to essentially pass a policy and change this. We want to create a city where all the people are mobilized, not just on issues of immigration status, but all other issues of accessibility, and essentially create a city that is safe for all. That's what we imagine for a sanctuary city to be.
I'm going to build on what Hassan has said, and one of the things is, sanctuary city comes from the realization that the borders just don't exist at the edges of the country, but that they're experienced by people every day when they're trying to access schools and being denied access to schools, when they're trying to access health centers and being denied access to care. And so the strategy has been that we enter into these sectors and we're bringing people together. So we're working with service providers, we're working with people who've been excluded from services and people who are using those services, and getting all these people to meet and to sort of together dismantle the borders that exist in people's work sites, in people's schools, and where people are being denied access. So, for example, in the health centers, we're starting to really try to push forward a access without fear policy that's challenging access without fear of being denied services, being in debt, being charged thousands of dollars for health care, or being detained and deported by immigration enforcement. So that's something that we've just started doing. Like Hassan's saying, we're going sector by sector, and now we're working on the health sector.
And I guess I'll expand kind of on Hassan and Abid and just say that a lot of No One is Illegal's work definitely comes through popular education and is looking to address not even the borders that exist every day today in people's actual physical lives, but the borders that become internalized and the way that people actually begin enforcing borders on each other. And one of the things we've seen in Toronto, unfortunately, lately is the Conservative government has helped to start what they call a snitch line, where people can actually go and make a telephone call to report undocumented people that are living in their neighborhood. And these kind of things, you see the downloading of the responsibility of immigration enforcement from the state to the agencies and now even within our communities. And so one of the things that No One Is Illegal is trying to do is build, understand that these people are more than illegal, more than undocumented, that people are people and that there are friends, there are lovers, there are brothers, there are sisters, and that we need to unlearn this kind of border philosophy, ideology that's been instilled in people and work on looking at entitlement. And I really liked what Lee had to say tonight in the panel when the question was posed, what does winning look like in migrant justice organizing? And when Lee said, it's not this material gain kind of thing that ends up happening. What it is it's a process, and it's these kind of processes that we're building. And even No One Is Illegal, a lot of the meetings that we are engaged in these days are talking about internal dynamics, and we see that as fundamental to building a more just world, to building a less racist world, or an anti-racist world, hopefully, and unlearning some of the things that are within ourselves that end up causing us to be a part of these larger structures that enforce borders. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I think this is what ends up, because when we start talking about fighting the downgrading of immigration enforcement, then we believe we're part of the anti-austerity project, because we can't say let's have access to community services when we see public services being privatized and being taken away from communities. So we're also putting our energy into creating that. We do not, just because we work directly with undocumented people and migrant workers does not mean that we can sort of shy away from the fact that the forces that displace people, environmental destruction, war and occupation, capitalism in its worst forms, and so much of our work is about supporting them. And so, I imagine a sanctuary city is a city where not just undocumented people have access to services, but also there isn't a corporation that is around the world creating war and therefore displacing people. There is not a corporation that is around the world, Canada being mostly a mining country, isn't around the world displacing people. And so this is sort of how our analysis is functioning, but also we're looking for feedback, ideas. We've written a lot about how we imagine the sanctuary city to go, and really looking for people to read it, to sort of correspond with us, because we need to make